So welcome everyone. We are really glad that you're here. This is our first San Luis Obispo Mothers for Peace. This is the first time we've done this. So everybody keep your fingers crossed. We've been working real hard. So I think everything's going to go really well. And the information you're going to receive tonight is what's important. So like I said, welcome. On our agenda, first of all, we have Yuji Kaneko and Beverly Findlay-Kaneko, who are from Yokohama, Japan. And they will be giving us an update on the Fukushima disaster. And their name of their segment is, it's going to be on Labe Halevi's nuclear hot seat. It's called Voices from Japan. And as you'll see on that slide, there's another place that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, Labe. But if you are not, go check out her website. She interviews people from all over the world and all over the country regarding nuclear issues. So she is a very important part of the anti-nuclear movement. So Yuji is an artist and a photographer. He has been involved in raising awareness about TEPCO's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident for the past decade. He has been Nuclear Hot Seats Voices from Japan's special correspondent since 2014 and has traveled to Fukushima once or twice every year. Beverly lived in Japan for over 20 years, where she worked at Yokohama National University and the Japan Times. She has been the co-producer and translator for Nuclear Hot Seats Voices from Japan since its inception in 2014. She has also organized many educational events for community and school groups to raise awareness about Fukushima and San Onofre. Beverly and Yuji were active in the movement to shut down San Onofre, participating in demonstrations and speaking at public meetings. So I am going to turn it over to Yuji and Beverly.
Okay, hi, I'm Yuji.
Wait.
Huh?
Yuji, gotta
Well,
do
it's
the
okay.
mute. Oh, we're off mute? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Beverly. You need to do the screen share.
Sure. Okay, I'll make it work.
You also need to let the cat in. Just a moment.
Okay,
Okay, can everybody see that all right?
Yep, it looks good.
Okay. Can you go let the cat in?
sure.
The cat is scratching and meowing. So, okay, so the presentation is going to take about 20 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions after that. So please save your questions for the end. Today we're going to talk about recovery in the former difficult to return or exclusion zones in Fukushima. The reason why we use the phrase parallel worlds in the subtitle here is that there's a disconnect between what Japan's national government and Fukushima's prefectural government would like us to believe and the picture that the actual visual and other evidence paints. One thing we would like to get straight at the outset is that the use of the name Fukushima as a catch-all to describe TEPCO's accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant is a little bit troubling. On one hand, it implies that all of Fukushima, actually a really huge prefecture, has been ruined by the accident. It places a stigma on the entire place. This in turn gives ammunition to those who are making accusations of false rumors and scaremongering when people bring up serious concerns about the areas that were severely contaminated and people whose lives are still upended by the continuing crisis. It also ignores the fact that the areas bordering Fukushima have also had issues. Yuji and I vote for renaming the accident in a way that places the blame at TEPCO's feet rather than smearing an entire prefecture, as well as providing cover for those who peddle in denialism. Today, we're focusing on 4 places in the rapidly shrinking, difficult to return zone, and you see them listed here: Itate Village, Futaba County, which we're going to look at Futaba, Okuma Town, and Tomioka Town. So when you visit these places, in various spots, you're going to find racks full of PR material promoting the area for tourism, relocation, and starting businesses. Here's a pamphlet that promotes tourism. It even suggests ways to get to the area, including the recently reopened Joban train line, which travels through areas of extremely high radiation. There are also sample itineraries, not to enjoy the local culture, which has effectively been wiped off the map, but rather to visit a series of Potemkin villages sporting various new sparkling structures built with billions of yen of government reconstruction funding. The J Village Soccer Complex, the new Great East Japan Earthquake and Nuclear Disaster Memorial Museum, a robot testing field, among other things. Today, we'll take a look at this C-Plan itinerary. Madeikan Community Center Rest Stop Souvenir Shop is in Itate Village, and the Great East Japan Earthquake and Nuclear Disaster Memorial Museum is in Futaba. The other thing on the itinerary is the robot testing field, which Prime Minister Suga touted as a silver lining of the nuclear disaster the other day. We'll give that one a miss. Yuji first visited the area in January 2014. There was still a lot of tsunami debris everywhere and a few stronger structures that survived. Radiation levels, this just makes me really sad, I'm sorry. Radiation levels were still extremely high, so you had to take precautions. Yuji went together with Setsuko Kida, who is from Tomioka, and Shinshu Hida, a photojournalist from Miharu, which is 30 miles away from Fukushima Daiichi. You can see that they're wearing protective coverings. Tomioka is about 5 miles from Fukushima Daiichi, and the White House here is Kida-san's house in 2014 with bags of decontaminated debris out in, decontamination debris out in front. She never ever moved back, and she now has a new home in Ibaraki. A company that's involved with reconstruction bought her house and is using it as an office now. In 2014, the only things that seemed to be living in the area were the wild and destructive boar-pig hybrids that were roaming around. This is the Tomioka Station shopping street, and it's completely abandoned. This was in 2014. But today, those buildings no longer exist. Yuji took this photo in November 2020. If a former resident of Tomioka saw this, they would be very sad. While they were wandering around Tomioka in 2014, they found Kida-san's car in front of the station. Her car was washed up in the tsunami. Here's another picture of her car. This is, let's see. This is Tomioka Station in 2014. It was severely damaged in the tsunami and the radiation levels were extremely high. It was off limits. This is the station today. Everything was stripped away. New concrete and asphalt were laid and a new structure built. No one is around, not even a station manager. You can see the ocean in the distance beyond the platform. It's a fishing port, but you can't see that because of a huge new seawall being built. You can see the cranes off in the distance there. No one got on or off the fancy new limited express train, and there were only a handful of people riding. This is in 2014 behind the station. It's like a great wall of decontamination bags, and some of them had even begun deteriorating. Luckily, another tsunami didn't come and wash them away. Here's a good picture from the platform at Tomioka Station today. You can get a better view of the construction. The radiation levels are about 0.05, about the same as Los Angeles or Tokyo. But If you move away from the new construction area by the shore, closer to the area still in the exclusion zone, the radiation levels change to 0.83 or 16 times the level in the decontaminated area. I think you understand how meaningless this fence is, since the radiation level is high on this side too. The government plans to clean up this area beyond the fence and have people return. This is Ono Station in Okuma Town.
Could you try?
In Ono Town, in Okuma Town, 2 stops away from Tomioka. It reopened in March 2020. You can get off here and walk around, but people are still not allowed to live here. So practically no one gets off here. For some reason, when Yuji was there, he saw this tour bus, but there were only 2 people on board. This is a house right next to Ono Station, and it's being torn down. Signs like this one can be seen throughout the exclusion zone. They are to prevent wayward tourists and irresponsible dark tourism YouTubers from trespassing in the exclusion zone and endangering themselves. The next few pictures are from Shinshu Hida. He guided a foreign TV crew in the area on the other side of Ono Station in December 2019. You can hear more from Hida-san on our episode on nuclear hot seat. The radiation levels are extremely high around here, and this is the Japan Agricultural Co-op office. The reading on the ground in front of the office was 49.5 microsieverts per hour, nearly 1,000 times that of Tokyo or Los Angeles. And you can see on this one here, on the red numbers here, about the 4th one down, that in November 2020, the soil in Okuma Town was 97,490 becquerels per kilogram. It's still a very contaminated place even now. The TV crew was wearing full protective gear because this area is in the exclusion zone, and you have to pass a screening area to get permission to enter. Now, this area has apparently been decontaminated, and you can walk along the street without any restrictions. You cannot enter anything on either side of the road, though. Notice that in this photo, that the decontamination worker is only wearing regular clothes and a simple mask. And they're the 2 of them here working in a very dusty place. They're working here at their own risk. Neither the government nor the construction company will take responsibility if they become sick in the future. Even the police officers on patrol in Okuma Town were not wearing any protective gear. For the next stop on our Parallel Worlds Potemkin Village tour, we're heading 25 miles to the northwest to Itate Village. It's pretty far from Fukushima Daiichi, but the winds changed and carried the plume over the village, contaminating the area severely. Yuji met with Nobuyoshi Ito in November 2020 in Itate Village. He's stayed living in the village since the accident. He posts how much radiation exposure he gets every day on Twitter. He's been active in publicizing the problems with radiation in his village in the media and on social networks. He was in a press conference at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan last year, and you can find a YouTube of that, a link on Nuclear Hot Seat. Also, Yuji's detailed interview with Ito-san is on Nuclear Hot Seat too. This is a children's nature adventure playground that Ito-san guided Yuji to. Even though the radiation levels are high, the village has done nothing but rudimentary decontamination. Ito-san explained that the farther you get from the decontaminated area below, the higher the radiation levels become. There are no warnings posted and no signs saying that the area should be off limits. Even the play equipment and the leaves on the ground, which are tempting to little kids, are still very contaminated, 20 or 30 times Tokyo or Los Angeles. Most villages are struggling to encourage families back to their hometowns or try to lure new families with children to boost their population. Ito-san talks about this quite a bit in the Nuclear Hot Seat interview. Itatemura has a fancy new school that costs millions of dollars. And here's an example of the perks on offer at Kawauchi Village, which is another previously difficult to return to village in that zone. This village offers all kinds of child rearing aid and relocation assistance. On the back of this flyer, there's a whole menu of tempting perks on offer, such as $1,000 on the birth of the first child, $2,000 for the second, and $3,000 for the third. There's even special assistance for single parent, single mother families with children under junior high school age, and so on. Please remember these past few slides when you listen to Mary's presentation later. And Ito-san also took Yuji to where the Olympic torch relay will pass. The runners will run along the middle of the street, and the middle of the street is about 0.2 microsieverts per hour, which is a little bit high, but it's not too bad. Along the sidewalk, though, it jumps to 7.5 microsieverts per hour. In Chernobyl, this would be a mandatory exclusion zone. This is Madeikan in Itate Village. It's a brand new rest stop, souvenir shop, community center that was built with tens of millions of dollars of government reconstruction funds. It's one of those tourist spots that are being promoted by the government and the prefecture. It's a lovely building, but there's really nothing special about it. They've done a really nice job decorating for Christmas, but Yuji found the radiation monitor on display next to the baskets in the souvenir shop to be something unique among Japanese souvenir shops. And this place also has a shop where people can buy local farm products. In the corner, there's a man who will help check the radiation levels in the vegetables with a special non-destructive assay device for free. This is not something that's available at other roadside produce stands in Japan. Itate Village was known as one of the most beautiful villages in Japan. Here are a few scenes from around town now. Very little farming is being done, and rather than tractors and cultivators, you'll see bulldozers and excavators. And despite the high radiation levels, there's only one area in Itate Village that's still off limits. That's the Nagadoro district. You can't enter there unless you're with a local. On this side of the restricted area sign, the road has been decontaminated. The reading here is 1.32 microsieverts per hour, or 26 times Tokyo or Los Angeles. Just on the other side of the sign and closer to the vegetation on the hillside, it shoots up to 2.49 microsieverts per hour, or 50 times Tokyo or Los Angeles. The final stop on our Parallel World Potemkin Village tour is Futaba, and the Great East Japan Earthquake and Nuclear Disaster Memorial Museum. It costs $51 million in government reconstruction funds. It's about 2 miles from Fukushima Daiichi. Yuji likens the museum to building a wildfire museum in the middle of a fire zone in the California foothills during the month of September. They don't allow photography inside, so these aren't Yuji's pictures here, the ones indoors. He doesn't understand why they forbid pictures and wasn't given a clear answer when he asked. The exhibits were dull and completely failed to communicate the horrible reality of a nuclear accident. The things surrounding the building did a much better job of that. There was nothing in the museum that addressed the issue of the government and TEPCO's responsibility for the accident, despite court decisions and the post-accident special investigation report. The museum received a lot of criticism for being out of touch and its lackluster displays, and for not addressing responsibility for the accident. Apparently, it's going to work on those displays. One thing is that it will probably never live up to the expectations of people like former mayor of Futaba, Katsutaka Idogawa, who is extremely critical of the government's response to the accident. He worked hard in the wake of the disaster to evacuate his townspeople far away to Saitama to keep them safe. He's not the kind of person who would be chosen, however, to speak in the closely supervised storyteller's corner in the museum. You can hear his story and more about the museum on Nuclear Hot Seat soon. There's an industrial relations center next door to the museum where you can go up on the roof and have a view all around. This is a video that Yuji shot when he was on top of the building. So you can see off in the distance, this is where they're going to be building a memorial park. But as you pan around here, then the decontamination debris processing facility comes into sight. And it's massive. You can see the trucks bringing in more and more soil and debris from other parts of the prefecture. And here's where they process the soil and the debris and so on. And we'll get a couple closer views here. Right off in the distance, that tower poking up is the exhaust stack at Fukushima Daiichi. This you can see the black areas where the decontamination processing site is, and where it says Denshokan, that's where the museum is. So it's very close together. This is an aerial view. This here is an incinerator where they burn the debris, and they run 24/7, and there are 6 of them around the prefecture burning radioactive debris. Apparently there's a filter there on the exhaust stack that's supposed to filter out the cesium. Also from the top of the Industrial Relations Center, you can see odd piles of debris and abandoned structures in a landscape that was stripped bare by the tsunami and subsequent cleanup effort. Let's get a closer look. And if you're curious about the radiation level in the area, at this particular spot, it was 0.67 or about 13 times LA or Tokyo. That's because the land has been stripped and also because it's near the shoreline. That brings us to the end of our Parallel World Potemkin Village tour, but I want to finish with one last slide. You must be wondering how the people in Fukushima feel about this after 10 years. This is a poll from the Asahi Shimbun. It compares the feelings of people in Fukushima Prefecture with Iwate and Miyagi, which were heavily damaged by the tsunami. On average, everybody overall feel that things are still worse or much worse than they expected. 62% of Fukushima respondents answered somewhat bad or very bad. In Miyagi, it was 38% and Iwate was 50%. Fukushima is by far the worst, but people in other areas are still struggling to reconcile their losses and trying to rebuild their lives too. It was a triple disaster, not just a nuclear disaster, with a terrible toll. And we really should all take a moment on March 11th to remember all of the lives lost and all of those lives that were irrevocably changed. Thank you. So can you take it down?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Now I do notice, so we will, I know that there are a lot of questions here. So I'm just going to start at the top. Okay, all right, here we go. Is there anyone on stack?
Molly,
Carol or Jane?
Molly,
Yes.
and everybody on this there are two of us, myself and Linda Seeley. We're watching for stack and for written questions. So we'll kind of help with that. So Molly, and everybody should know that toward the end of this, please save the chat because some people asked questions and they were answered very thoroughly in the chat.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, but here's a question that somebody asked that I don't think was completely answered. The question is, how effective is the filtering at the processing site where the bags of soil are burned? Is that filtering of cesium effective, or do you know?
そこ全部測りながらやってるから。
They are monitoring it when they are incinerating the debris. So apparently it's pretty effective.
Okay, good. Another question I saw written was, does the land recovers in quotes, after it's stripped of topsoil, contaminated topsoil is removed, and then does the land recover over time, or what happens there?
Well, they have to, if they're going to farm, they have to bring in all new soil because, you know, topsoil takes years and years and years to develop. And if you listen to our interview with Ito-san on nuclear hot seat, he does a lot of research into the leaves and things that are used to compost. In Japan, they practice swidden agriculture, which means they burn the fields and then they use the ash to fertilize those fields. And he's doing research into that and the different radiation levels. So you can learn more about that from the nuclear hot seat interview.
Good. I still don't see anybody on stack. So again, if you want to personally speak and voice your question, just put stack in the chat and then we'll try to line you up. Okay, let's see. Here's a question. Where does the radioactive elements go after the filtering process? So if the cesium is filtered out, then what happens to it? The filtered
Okay,
out
so
stuff.
there's a couple things going on here, and you just reminded me, I sort of skipped something important when I was showing you all those pictures of the reprocessing. First, the soil, they have decided that 8,000 becquerels per kilogram or less can be reused or, you know, whatever somewhere. But anything that's more than that is going to be put into an interim storage facility. And they say over the next 30 years, they're going to be carting that to other areas in Japan. The way they're going to be doing that is taking that soil, mixing it with soil that is not contaminated. In other words, you know, dilution is the solution to pollution, and taking it to other parts of Japan and using it for public works underlayment. So like when they build a road, that'll be the, you know, bottom layer, this sort of radioactive stuff, and then they put dirt over it and asphalt or whatever. So you know, basically they're going to be spreading it out across Japan.
And on stack, we have Mimi German. Mimi, can you unmute and say your question?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I wanted to add that living near Hanford and doing radiation readings at Hanford, after the remediated soil areas were supposedly completed, I did a couple years in a row, radiation readings of those areas. And those areas are still hot, like they're very hot. And those are cleaned out and finished. So that's the same soil that when the winds blow and occasionally they'll set an alarm in the Tri-Cities in Washington saying that there's radiated soil blowing across the highway, that's from there. So Fukushima in that area, that whole area is so much worse.
Oh, yeah.
And right. And so what TEPCO is saying about what the readings are, first of all, they've lied all the way along. So to think, for me anyway, that any of the numbers that they're releasing now are all of a sudden true is a
Well,
flag.
we're not thinking they're true.
Oh, no, I know,
Yeah,
I can
that's
tell.
why somebody like Ito-san, I mean, what the government and TEPCO does is go and put a few big radiation monitors around town and say everything's okay. But then somebody like Ito-san, you know, he's out there measuring things everywhere all around all the time, which shows a completely different picture. And I think I did see Rachel Clark here and Mari Inoue, who were involved in that, putting out the English version of that big mapping project of the Citizens Science Project in Japan, where, you know, regular people have gone out and measured in their areas. And it shows a completely different picture than, you know, what you're getting from TEPCO or from the government, for sure.
And I
Yeah.
think we might have time for one more question, and then we are going to have to move on.
Okay, there's several more people. Okay, there's several questions in the chat about the instrumentation being used in this film to measure radiation. And the question is, what instrumentation is that? Is it available? And somebody wants it compared to the
Safecast.
yeah, the Safecast, the equipment from Safecast.
The
Someone would
things,
compare it.
Yuji has two like stick ones, and those are you know, not, you know, super duper fancy things. He carries around two of them because you know, if one of them is kind of off, then you know, you look at both of them, you get both readings. The other instruments that you saw that were with Shinshu Hida and that group, and also with Ito-san, those are, you know, much higher level instruments. And I think one of the monitors that Yuji took a picture of with Ito-san, you said it was something that cost like $2,500.
Right.
Yeah, so you know, Ito-san for sure, that, you know, that's kind of his life now, is going around and measuring radiation. So he has all kinds of stuff in his home. You know, he's the one that encouraged getting the non-destructive assay device for the community. And so you saw various things in the slideshow that we showed you today.
Okay, thank you so very much. That was
Okay.
really excellent. I wish we had time to get through all these questions because, you know, we might want to expand this at some point or another. So that would be really wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
People can get in touch with us. We're happy to
Yeah.
talk to people.
Right, and encourage everyone. We put the website up for Nuclear Hot Seat for Voices from Japan, and so that's was just really wonderful. Thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.